We start recording. The challenge today specifically is that many people are grappling with load shedding. We've had lots of many messages from people saying, oh, I'd love to be there, please record. So I want those of you going to be speaking know that you're not just speaking to this group, you're speaking to a much larger audience of people. Load shedding is not helping us at the moment. Our session this afternoon is part of a series of conversations where we're introducing South Africans to inspirational organizations and the people who lead them, with the intention that we can support each other's work. And we have many, many ways in which we can. We can either get actively involved, we can support people on social media, we can help amplify their message. And one of the ideas here is that we're not going to do that until we get to know the real warm human beings, fallible and vulnerable behind the personas. And I've used Wayne as an example many times. You know, he looks like this big man. And when I got to know him just a little bit, I just thought I want to have everybody have that experience. So Wayne this afternoon is going to introduce Outer, and then we're going to hear from his colleagues, Stephanie and Ferial. He is very clever. He's surrounding himself by beautiful and intelligent women. That's what every man should do if they want to be successful. So Wayne is not, he's got lots of intelligence here. So Wayne, over to you. And I'm gonna keep an eye on when people put their hands up, but I assume that it'd be good to just give you about 15 minutes or so to talk, and then we'll hear some responses, and then we'll hand over to Stephanie and then to Ferial. So over to you, Wayne.
So thanks very much, Louise, and for everybody joining in. I think these discussions and networking sessions are important. We've got to listen to these stories that need to be heard and told. I think we've got a lot of work to take this country forward. But I just want to give you a background to ARTA and how did it come about? You know, how did we get to where we are today? It certainly didn't start out, we didn't plan it to be what it is today. It was initially a business quest to challenge a decision by government on this e-tolling or Gauteng's freeway network. And I think, like all civil action organizations and NGOs, it does start out with a plan to challenge something that is unjust or immoral or really irrational, and things turn out very differently as you go down this road. So 11 years ago, as I said, when government decided to introduce, or they had introduced the e-toll scheme, and we learnt about it, it was a consortium of businesses that were really concerned, not about the fact that government is introducing an electronic process, because these schemes do work around the world. It wasn't about the fact that we didn't want to pay for the roads or you know, opposed a user pays principle. We understand the user pays principle, but it was a scheme that was never going to have all users pay, and it was a scheme that was never going to be able to enforce its own rules. It was a very cumbersome, administratively a complex scheme, which was going to fail. We could see it, and after trying to convince SANRAL and government to change its mind for literally a whole year, we could see, and we learned along the way that this needed a legal challenge, although we were on dangerous ground because we had come late. Nonetheless, we went ahead, business funded it, mainly the car rental players are still involved in chairing the car rental industry at the time. But what I'm telling you about is that, and it's very difficult to get business, by the way, to challenge government. There is this fear because business stays very focused on their primary principle of profits, and very often profits at any cost, which is so sad. And we've seen how businesses have you know, become problematic in that space and actually fed the whole state capture process. When you look at Bain, when you look at KPMG, McKinsey's and ABB and BB and so many others. So it was a feat, I think, first of all, to get business to say we need to challenge this in court, because not only was it cumbersome and inefficient and largely unworkable, it was fraught with corruption, and corruption written all over it. I mean, just the road construction of this 186-kilometer upgrade which should never have cost more than 7 to 8 billion rand, cost us 18 billion rand as a country. And the construction companies were found wanting after the fact. On top of that, CAPS Trafficom was probably going to siphon off offshore about 1 billion rand a year. And so this administration cost of this ETOL scheme internationally, we did our research, why they fail internationally and why they work. Internationally, the average admin cost of the scheme was between 7 and 11%. This scheme was at 27%. And we could see what was happening. This was money moving offshore. And we had to challenge it. So business came on board and said, right, we'll finance it. And no sooner had we successfully got the interdict, which we were lucky to get, did government lean heavily on business and get them to stop funding us. And that put us in a dire situation. And we had to really think out the box as to how do we become more relevant to the real people, and that is citizens, because this is the issue for them. At the time, I had left Avis because this needed full-time attention. I'd been in that role, in the CEO role, for 5 years. I was looking for something different to do. It wasn't necessarily in the civil action space, activism space, but it was a challenge that had to be driven through a formalized process and structure. And what ensued over those years from 2012 to about 2014 was a court challenge that literally became so technical that government was given granted the license to go ahead. In other words, the courts weren't going to stop this technical issue, but they did open the door for a collateral challenge, for a defensive challenge. And literally what they said was, government's allowed to make mistakes. Government's allowed to pave the roads in gold if they want. This is the executive powers. And you've come too late, Arta. But if you can, and if any individual for that matter can prove to a court of law in the future that they couldn't participate, that their constitutional rights had been usurped, that their freedom of movement had been usurped by a scheme that was unworkable or very difficult for them to participate in, then you can bring a collateral challenge. And that's where we had to make a decision. We've fought this court challenge, very costly, by the way. The lawyers told us in the beginning about 1 million rand it would cost. We hadn't even finished the interdict on part A of the review in court, and we'd spent 3.5 million. So when lawyers tell you something on a price, I don't even say double it or triple it. We literally spent 10 million rand on this case. Well, we had the lawyers write off 2 million at the end because we just couldn't pay them the last 2 million. And that's when we had to make a decision. Does ARTA move forward and continue to defend the public who were very angry? The scheme had launched. They were being threatened by SANRAL and government that they will be criminalized. They won't have their licenses renewed. And you can imagine this middle-class society really seeing something wrong. ARTA's there, tried to do its best in court, hadn't managed to stop it in court, and now had to make a decision. Do we drive a civil activism campaign to defy a law in this country? And middle-class South Africans are scared. They are scared to spend a night in jail. They're scared to not have their licenses or their license taken away. So we were up for a massive challenge. But I think headlines upon headlines, weekly, state capture was in full swing. Dudumnyeni, SAA, Denel, Eskom. It was, the people were getting really fed up with corruption. And this was a fight that they were willing to take on one condition. They asked us so often, we used social media very well. We used the media very well as well. We were a small team at that time, up to 2015, 3 people. And we had to make a decision. Do we go down this road? Do we fight this challenge on behalf of citizens? And we put it to citizens that we will do this fight. We will, if SANRAL is going to summons you, which they were threatening to do, we will defend you. You'll have to give us the mandate, but we can only do on one condition, that we have funds to do so, and we are broke. So you need to assist us in this fight that we'll bring. It's your fight. It's not our fight. It's society's fight. It's South Africa's fight. And we'll gladly fight this for you. But we can't do it without money. And the one thing we had learned, because up until then people were donating, but once off, is in order to do this fight, you have to have good people. You have to have professional legal people to build this fight. We were tired of funding big law firms. We wanted to build our own legal capacity, and we needed to pay market-related salaries. And we knew that one-off donations, people felt they had donated once off, that's fine, that they'd come to the party, but we had to build annuity income. So we had to make a strong decision and not allow people to give us once-off donations. It was a very tough decision, but it worked. We were basically saying, rather than give us 1,000 Rand or 500 Rand, give us 100 Rand a month. Give us 50 Rand a month. If you're a business, give us 200 Rand a month. We weren't allowed to dictate. We weren't selling services. We're not allowed to. We were an NGO, public benefit organization. And we just relied on donations. And we only opened up a debit order process. Without that, we would have failed. We would never be here today. And lo and behold, people decided, look, I'd rather support ARTA than fund this corrupt scheme, this scheme that was extremely irrational. And we spelt it out. We spelled out why we have to fight this, why it's important for society to defy irrational laws. It's an obligation that we have. And so we moved away from this corporate funding into citizen-based funding. And that was the turn of the organization. And then we were asked, why just e-tolls? There's so much corruption going on. And we said, okay, we will have a look at this. And we very quickly did. And in 2016, changed that ARTA acronym from, it stood for Opposition to Urban Tolling Alliance at that stage. We broadened our memorandum of incorporation into our constitution, into ARTA becoming Organization Undoing Tax Abuse. And we set out to build a team that was going to continue this e-toll fight, but it was going to build a team of professionals in the legal space, because again, I didn't want to make lawyers rich. We wanted to build cases quickly and cheaply with our own team. And we wanted to build a litigation fund so that we didn't have to wait too long if we needed to interdict matters like the BNP Capital case at SAA. There were a lot of these cases that were unfolding where there was this enrichment. There's a boutique finance houses were being enriched, and these schemes are being set up by Dudumyeni and others. So we had to move fast. We got the funding, but the journey then of how ARTA got to where it is today is the exciting journey, because I can tell you there's no book written. You want to go and open a restaurant or hotel, you'll find the plans and the strategies on how to do that. But in this space, we didn't want to be a typical NGO. We didn't want to just expose. We wanted to hold people's feet to the fire and develop a methodology that made people feel the pain of their transgressions, that laid charges, that laid complaints, that took people on in court in civil cases like we did with Dudumyeni, which I'm sure Stefani will share with you shortly. But it was all about building this organization. While we were building it, putting the governance in, putting the structure in, changing strategy, learning about how we were going to do this differently. And it's so difficult when you change strategy or realize that you actually need to move away from a portfolio-based structure to bringing legal specialists on that can cover different fields. And we found ourselves by 2017, 2018, having square pegs in round holes. I must say that was the biggest challenge, is to get the right people, but we got through that. We got through our structure change, and we really got into an exciting space of building a team that was very, very focused, activists, professionals, and we'd moved away from volunteers because it just was difficult to manage volunteers who were here today, gone tomorrow. The longevity of having this continuity that we needed, because some of these cases, projects, they run for years. And so to cut a long story short, 6 years after we changed that strategy at 2016 to where we are now, we've built a well-oiled machine, and it continues to evolve and be refined. But I think we've got more square pegs in square holes now. We've got our structure right. It's a journey, and it continues to change as our strategy expands and evolves. But this is all about people. This is all about people with passion, with an activist mindset. It's about having proper structure. It's about having good governance. And governance is we never stop working on it, but getting our board right, getting our processes and policies in place. It's like running a business. And one of the other big successes for us was putting enough effort and expertise into communication. So we set up within ARTA, we've got a communications and marketing department, and it is literally a quarter of our staff, or so about 10 people, that make sure that we get our message across on social media, that we're engaging with media, putting out professional media statements, because we've learned the power of media. We've learned about what it means to be accessible to media, especially when you're challenging government. You know, they put out statements, you have to counter those statements, you have to get the narrative right, and you have to explain and do the research that comes with that. So this accountability division, which Stefanie heads up, has been well structured. We also decided a couple of years ago to put in a parliamentary engagement office. We felt that the MPs needed to be engaged with. We wanted to see why Parliament was failing, why it wasn't not doing what it should be doing and holding government to account, or certainly the administration to account. And we've learned a lot through that process. And it was about 2 years ago in our strategy that we said, now, how do we keep what we've got, but expand again to become more solution-based? In other words, how do we empower civil society? Because we tried to go into local government and realized we can't go there. It's just too broad and wide with 257 municipalities. But how do we empower citizens, organized communities in these municipalities, in these residents associations, community associations, and business chambers, with an understanding of their rights to hold government to account? How do we get that right? And so we've started to develop what we call this Community Action Network platform, which is CAN for short. We've developed an app that helps citizens and municipalities for free, to both, by the way, to report infrastructure breakdown, which we're launching at the moment. We've tested in a few municipalities. And then a new exciting one being WaterCan, which Ferial is going to tell you about. So that's just in a nutshell the journey. It's been an exciting one. It's 200 plus projects that we've done in the last 6 years, 85% success rate. As I said, some take years, some take a couple of months. Amazing people. People is everything in this organization. It's about the energy we can get out of our staff, or from our staff, or through our staff, and then putting all those other proper strategic processes in place. And we are only as good as our people. So we have 45 staff now. Staff is 70% of our cost. It is all about people, energy. And we're an organization that relies on income from donations, averaging at about 120 Rand. Some businesses give us a lot more than that. But average overall, that's what we're getting per donation. And I've always said that, you know, it's not about how much. People think that if they give too little, it really doesn't make an impact. It does. This whole citizen funding, crowdfunding space is so critical in what we do and getting that message out there. So we need more people on board. We are tight at the moment. We should be double our size. We could do a lot more if we had a lot more people on board. Nonetheless, this is about you learning more of what we're doing in other areas. So I'm going to hand over to Stefanie. It's up to you, Louise.
Yeah, I think before we hand over to Stefanie, Wayne, I just want to create an opportunity for people to, if anybody had a question that they're sitting with, that they want to, and because we're a small group, we can just engage. So really want to encourage you to open your mic, and Craig's just done that. And if anybody else sitting with a question, so I'll keep an eye on time, but we're going to hear from Craig, and then we're going to hear from Ayanda, and then a few more people, and then we'll hand over to Stefanie. So Craig first, and then Ayanda.
Wayne, back to the original toll issue, the e-tolls. One of the things that surprises me is that there's been no case. Is it that the state has not prosecuted anybody yet for non-payment, or have they successfully prosecuted people for non-payment? What is the status quo there?
Okay, a very, very interesting question. So what happened was They had threatened to. And Sanral became our best salesman, by the way, because every time they put out media statements, and they were summoning the public, we got more people coming to us and saying, well, can you help, and can we give you the mandate to defend us? And that whole ETOL defense umbrella that we launched. So it did start around about towards the end of 2016, they started summoning the public, and they had a right to do so. And threatening, by the way, with blacklisting people who were defaulting on their payments to Sanral. And it was this perfect storm for them, and things played into our hand because the Credit Bureau Association came out and said, sorry, Sanral, but you cannot blacklist anybody. There can be no bad credit rating for people who don't pay e-tolls because you took yourself out of the act that the Credit Act, the National Credit Act. And so because they don't, there's no checking whether you have the ability to pay. This is not about an application. So the long and short of that was they started summoning, and Stefanie and her team set up this production line, and we were getting people calling us daily. Tons of people saying, can you defend me? Can you? We said, sure. And we literally blew Sanral's legal people out of the water, because we got 2,000 of these summonses and we defended every one of them. But what was happening is 2,000 court cases were starting to come to the fore. And the courts said, well, we can't have this. And we said, well, what do you want to do about it? And with Sanral, and we agreed on a test case. But it wasn't just one case. We said, we'll do a test case, but it needs to be an individual. It needs to be people living in different areas. It needs to be businesses, small, medium, large, because the test case must look at all factors. How do people participate in this scheme? And we were ready for that. We had come a long way. We built our papers. They'd built their papers. The answering affidavits were flowing. The 2019 national elections were coming in May. E-tolls was headlines on a weekly basis, people expressing their frustrations. They can't pay. Why am I getting summons? What's going to happen? Or am I going to become a criminal? And this was just playing into our hands. And we said, we will fight. We'll defend every single case. And then I think Cyril Ramaphosa tapped Sanral's board on the shoulder and said, this, my friend, is not good for the country. You've lost this case just on the narrative, you cannot. It was like the Group Areas Act, and Gilbert Marcus, our senior counsel at the beginning, said, this is what we want, because we'll tackle them one by one until a precedent case comes, until some judge says this is not possible. You cannot force people to participate in a scheme where they have a right to travel to work, to travel to pick their kids up at school and not be subjected to traffic jams and potholed roads off the freeway. So it was a lovely fight. Sanral abandoned the case. It's still open, by the way. It hasn't been closed. And we've said to them, we want to go to war. We were ready to go to court. You can't just stop. But maybe Stefanie can elaborate a little bit more on that, because she was driving that case brilliantly. But the long and short of that answer is it went there and it's frozen. And that was frozen since 2019. They really have no case. They have no appetite. They've come to terms with the fact that the scheme has failed. It really wasn't paying for the roads, and so the plug will be pulled. There was no option.
Thank you, Wayne. Your story is such a reminder of what's possible when citizens just say, no, not on our watch. And you have modeled that for us for the last 10 years. So, and everybody's clapping, those you can see. So let's go to Ayanda and hear his question.
Yeah, thank you so much, Louise. Wayne, I imagine that you've suffered a lot of personal attack in leading this, if I could say, civil rebellion, so to speak. I'm curious about, how did you find yourself at the forefront of this and why you've stayed? So I imagine this speaks to a lot of us as South Africans in terms of the fights that we need to fight in our various areas. Yeah,
well, the attack came from Sanral themselves. Nazir earlier was enemy number one. But the attack was a subtle one in that they tried to, this litigation, this attrition through lawfare strategy. was one of the areas. And then bullying of business, literally telling them, and I saw the emails, you will stop funding out, otherwise we'll take you off the procurement lists. And it was very threatening. And that's what happened. Big business ran away. All those fleet companies that were funding, a very rightful case to fund, by the way. And then, you know, I knew I was being followed. That was brought to my attention by people who had watched the space unfold. I didn't even know it, but I didn't feel threatened. They just wanted to know who was funding us, who we were meeting. Phones were tapped. So it was challenging, but the biggest challenge, I guess, came when the funding dried up, and we were doing all of this, by the way, and I'd left Avis. We were doing this for free. There was no money to pay salaries. You had to pay everything into the legal costs. And so we had to make decisions. There was just three of us, as I said, and after a while, you got to decide what are you going to do. So if we didn't get the funding model right, it wouldn't have worked for us. So from a safety point of view, I didn't feel unsafe, but we're very mindful of the fact that that all our staff, we have to be very careful. We have to watch where we're going, especially when we're dealing with whistleblowers. But it's been, the attack really was on the organization. It was more so in Zuma's days, by the way. That's gone now. We are embraced by a lot of government departments now who are talking to us, engaging with us, who are trying to find solutions. But the typical ones, the Fikile Mbululas, Gwede Mantashis of the world, their heads are buried in the sand. They just do not like civil society telling them that they're wrong, that they've got to change their ways. They're so set in their ways. So I hope I've answered your question, but I feel safe and I feel a little bit more relaxed now that there's 47 targets and not just one. You can take one head out.
Are you?
You can take one head out. No, you're not going to kill the organization.
No, Wayne, let's not even bring any of that into this conversation. So Wayne, you wanted to move. I just want to check whether anybody, Reynold, you had your hand earlier. Did you want to say something, or has anybody else asked your question?
Yeah, Ayanda sort of like partially raised it, but I'll ask mine anyway. Wayne, how easy or difficult was it to change your organization's name to fit your new vision? Because I mean, Outer stood for something else before, and you had this new sort of like mandate. How easy or difficult was it to change the name to still fit the acronym?
Well, the interesting thing was the name, how it was set up initially, because when we were going to court, building the papers for the initial interdict in 2012, the legal team said, so who's bringing this fight to government? And Sevrola was going to, that's the South African Vehicle Renting and Leasing Association, but then the others, we had others joining us, the retail motor industry, Sanku, the Quad Para Association. So we had to become an association of associations, so to speak. We had to set up this new organization, and we were literally going to the lawyer's office, and he wanted to know under what name. We still had to register it. And we were sitting across the road at Balalaika, and we said, well, we've got to find a name. So what is a name? Let's get an acronym. So we came up initially with OUT because it was opposition to, well, first it was opposition to tolling. Then we said, no, this is an urban tolling. So it became OUT, opposition to urban tolling. We quickly Googled out.co.za. That was taken by Outsurance. So we had to add an A on, or another letter. And we called it Alliance or Association, yeah, Opposition to Urban Tolling Association. That wasn't taken. We quickly registered the URL, and then we set about setting the constitution and registering the company as OUTA. So now we had OUTA. It rolled off the tongue, and it worked from that point of view. And when we had to change from that, we wanted to keep the acronym because it was doing well. Then we were either going to call ourselves the People's Parliament, but the outer brand had become quite strong. So we really just had to think, and we sat around a table and said, okay, what are we going to use those 4 letters for to really speak to what we're doing? And opposing organization undoing tax abuse is what came out. It was just one of those things. And so we quickly just changed the name, broadened the mandate, and lo and behold, it's worked.
Thank you, Wayne. So I think what we're going to do now is we're going to hand over to Stephanie. Wayne, was Stephanie one of the first, when it was just 3, was she there with you?
No, it was Paul Powen, who was part of Savrala, and I think Jeff Osborne, who was part of RMI. Well, before him was SATSA, the South African Tourism Association. Michael, he's in Canada at the moment. But Stefanie came on quite early. It was 2017, I think. Yeah, Stefanie, I must say, a stalwart, and just has led this team of legal-minded people, investigators, that work together like the NPA. Coming out of that space, she had a good understanding of what needed to be done. So yeah, I'd love Stefanie to give us an idea of how accountability works in this division in art, and then we're going to hear some exciting background to this water can from Ferial. Over to you, Stefanie.
Thank you. Over to you, Stefanie.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. Please show me when I've overextended my stay and talking. I always say I hate public speaking, but I love, it's typical of say an advocate. I can do heads of argument and argue a point. I just hate public speaking. But talking about ALTA, is I can't stop. So please indicate if I've overstayed my welcome. I sit with a group of people. So except for that, ALTA is an energetic bunch and a privilege to work for this organization. The accountability team is also an inspiration. I get up in the morning and look forward to going to work, except for the fact that we are really working together to create a better South Africa for all and have the ability to hold to account corrupt individuals, challenging the irrational policies. It really is a privilege working with the team. So the division, last year, we also added the parliamentary team. So we have the accountability division that includes sort of public governance and includes a parliamentary team. So we have the project managers, that is project managers, legal project managers. We have the investigation department and then the parliamentary team that is actually situated in Parliament. So part of the idea and reasoning behind it is that you can take action. You can be a civil activist on so many different levels. Yes, litigation, sometimes you can't help it. You have to litigate. And I just love litigation. I think if you threw money at me, I have I can spend your money on litigation on behalf of ALTA to hold people to account. But there is so many other ways to hold people to account. And this is where our methodology came from. So we follow a project management system. And we have various tools, but and ProofUp is the tool that we use to just create a bit of to organize our thoughts and project management. But our methodology starts with the project proposal. So we try to, it's also a work in progress, but we try to identify what is the objective of a project so that we can at the end decide whether we are successful, unsuccessful, or no longer applicable. But part of this methodology is investigations or research. So we make sure that when we deal with a project, that we investigate it, we investigate the people, and then do the necessary research so that we don't sit, so that we know what we're talking about and not just shout from a rooftop. We do engage, although these steps doesn't necessarily follow one another. It depends on the project, but we like to engage. We don't just like to run and expose. We like to engage first. Maybe they can convince us that what we see as something untoward is actually something that is supposed to happen. So we engage, but if they don't want to listen, we also expose. Now, part of being a civil activist is also the mobilization. So we have the team that's part of the comms and marketing team. Ali and his team, brilliant. This is the guys that you see on a breach brigade. That's the mobilization part. Just to say that we're here and please listen to the message. It's another way of getting your message across. And then we take action. That really is. There's a multitude of ways of taking action. And I think that's what I learned. I come from the NPA. I was a state advocate. and being part of the civil activist organization, I'm not perfect. I've got a lot to learn when it comes to civil activism, but to combine, you know, the legal space with being a civil activist is brilliant. And I think ARTA is quite successful, if I may add. And I think that comes from Wayne. They also had that combination, but be that as it may. And then litigation, and then closure of a project. So the investigation team is, we are very reactive in a certain way, in the sense that we have Whisply, which is our whistleblower platform, where people anonymously can share information with us that we can then check. We have also, you know, some other tools that we can use to just make sure, you know, is this a whistleblower with you know, wants to create problems, or is it something we can believe in? I'm always reminded of, you know, the whole Gupta leaks that was also shared with us, which also is a feather in Wayne's cap, that we were trusted to get that huge database. But in any case, Whisply, anonymously, people can share information with us. We have the ability to look at it, sift through it, and see what are the things that we want to tackle. There's an investigation manager with 2 investigators and then a knowledge base administrator. We have this platform called, I want to say Nextcloud. Wayne, what is our Skynet? That is an incredible search engine. So when the Gupta leaks were dumped on our laps, it was just impossible to go through everything. If you think about it, it's a server. So this Skynet helped us to look through and search and so on. So we're building on Skynet so that we can create intelligence, because sometimes, you know, understanding the landscape, you also understand what type of actions you should take. You know, sometimes strategically, it is better to have that engagement and sit around a table than to, you know, knock on someone's door and say, listen, here's the summons. So if you understand the landscape. So we have project managers. We have some project managers with legal degrees. That's legal people. We are very special, I like to say, a unique bunch. But we also have, for example, Rudy, that has this vast knowledge about state capture. I sometimes think you know, if you want to know anything about state capture, ask him. If he doesn't know, then it probably didn't happen. He is really the expert. Tabile, who is an absolute star when it comes to the public governance policy, tackling that and working closely with the parliamentary team. The parliamentary team is getting there. We have this parliamentary oversight review that is sort of looking at Parliament and then telling them where we think they have failed, because unfortunately there are in any walks of life, you know, politicians, necessary evil. There's the good people that is trying their best, but unfortunately there's also the bad apples, and Parliament was a bit asleep at the wheel. So it is about, you know, pointing out, but I sometimes think that, you know, to shout from the roof that what is wrong is easy. It is about how do we fix it, and how do we empower people to help themselves in order to fix their situation. So that is, you know, that's just the lack of stuff. And then maybe I should end off by just pointing towards some of the litigation. Dudu Mnyeni, declared a delinquent director. I really think we, you know, civil society really deserves a high five in this instance. You know, our supporters, without them, we wouldn't have been able to do this. And before anybody was held accountable for state capture, we were able to declare Dudu Mnyeni a delinquent director. And in terms of law, I can also say that I think that was a very sort of first of sorts in that space, and are definitely first for a civil activist organization to hold someone to account. It was important, a very big SOE. We know where SAA is currently still struggling, and that was important litigation. We are currently in court with car power ships. This is, again, if you just how it can make sense that you sign an agreement for 20 years, it's going to cost this country an enormous amount of money. When they leave, there's no job creation. We just don't need it. We need, you know, whether you believe in independent power producers or not, we need different solutions. We need politicians to stay out of it. Let business run business, and let us, try and fix our SOEs so that they can. Why are they there? Is to make things better for South Africa and be run, I think, to a large degree like a business, but in the best interest of South Africans, not the pockets of an elect few. And then R2 was declared unconstitutional. We are currently in the Constitutional Court, waiting for the Constitutional Court to say that, well, I believe they're going to agree with us, but obviously we need to wait until the Court gives the thumbs up and say it is in fact unconstitutional. Now, it might be a question of, but why? R2 is supposed to curb road deaths. And, why fiddle with litigation that's there? The problem is that it is not curbing road deaths, and that we need to look at solutions that will make sure that our roads are safe. And then I think I have to just refer to e-tolls. Our court cases are standing still because Sunroll has said in 2019, we will not go after people for outstanding debts while government is making their decision. And what he said is that with a 15% compliance rate, is that government, they do not have a choice. They have to accept that e-tolls has failed. But alas, we're still waiting for the decision. So that is in a nutshell. I literally can go for the rest of the day just trying to share what everybody is doing in all the projects. But yeah, that is trying to tell you in a nutshell what we do at Outer. And I can tell you, yeah, I wish everybody could be here because it is an inspirational group of people.
Stephanie, Stephanie, we decided we're going to have these sessions because we need to become a bit more enchanted with each other, and you have just sold out to all of us. So Wayne, I know you can't, you don't have jobs, but I said to him earlier, if I was looking for a job, I'll come and knock on this door. It really does. And John Lucas just saying that the passion is palpable. So Stephanie, we hope that you're going to join our African Leadership Week WhatsApp group, and that we can have you as part of our conversation going forward. We need the legal beagles. We need all of us. We need all of us. I do have a question, and this is, and I'm using my power as facilitator to host, to ask a question to you and Wayne, and maybe, I don't know who wants to go first, but we see what's going on in local government. We're seeing what's going on everywhere. I've just spent 12 years of my life in education. I think the big issue, apart from the corruption, so I'm not worried, I'm not going to talk about the corruption. I want to talk about most civil servants have jobs that they have not been prepared for. They haven't been trained well. They're being asked to look after the water or the electricity or whatever, and they have genuinely not got a clue. And so I want to know how do we, I sometimes think, I think a school principal, if you want to be, and I'm just use it as an example, if you want to be a school principal in South Africa, only requirement is you must have got a number of years of experience as a teacher. There's no expectation that you're going to actually know how to lead and manage a complex organization. So how do we get government to kind of take that seriously? Because until we deal with the capacity and the knowledge and skills issues, we're just going to keep exposing ineptitude. So Wayne, do you have a solution or an answer to that?
It is about, cadre deployment has fed into this process. We've seen it. We see people with a bookkeeping diploma as the CFO of big municipalities, cities. And cities are complex to run, and it's just this Peter principle kicks in. If I've got the position, then I'm competent. And it's the reason why municipalities are failing. It's the reason why departments are failing in many respects, why education, healthcare. It sadly is a matter of this whole cadre deployment process that the ANC has adopted for years now. And so we do find that people are out of their depth in these roles, in these positions. They just cannot go. Running a hospital, this issue at Rahima Musa Mother and Child Hospital it's just diabolical to see what is happening. So the only way you're going to fix that is when there's a political will, and hopefully 2024 brings about the necessary change to make sure that what we do as a country is put people who are fit for role and fit for purpose into positions of power and authority, and then to be held accountable, because that's the other thing that's missing. Is if people fail, but they still keep their jobs, they're accountable, or they become dismissed or put on suspension for 5 years, or we see it often. They get fired from one position and they pop up in another province, and it's just diabolical that can even happen. But that's what this whole mindset of cadre deployment does. I don't know, Stefanie, if you've got anything to add there. It's just so sad to see people failing the way they are.
It is. The only thing I want to add is that I do think that our job is cut out for us, in the sense that I think we need to make activists of each and every person, that's living in a municipality. I think, it is sort of accepted that we have this chaos. And then what people do is, okay, let's pave the road ourselves and all of that. I think people need to firstly just realize the effect of corruption, that corruption has an effect on each and every one of us, and that by challenging corruption and curbing corruption, we make everybody's lives better. And I think people need to realize that they have a right to stand up and say no more. And I think adding to what Wayne has said is electoral reform, that the process that it's currently in Parliament, with looking at a different way, normal citizens need to be part of the process. And I'm not only blaming the politicians, because yes, they need to be a political will, but it's also citizens that needs to, there's going to be some pain coming, but you need to take control and you need to become activists in order to effect change. I think it's not the saying gets stuck in my head, and I think I repeat it wrong, but it's when good people stay quiet, bad things happen. We need to start being vocal again and realize that you deserve it. Not you need to accept what is being told. You have a right to clean water. You have a right to a road that is properly planned. You have a right that your kids can have proper education. And you have a right to a proper health system. And if our taxes are used in a proper way, we can do all that.
So Stefanie, you are singing to the choir, but that's wonderful, because this message is going to be spread into the rest of the world. And one of the active citizens who absolutely agree with your message is John Luke. So John Luke, over to you.
Thank you so much, Louise. Yeah, incredible to be a part of this conversation. I just wanted to bring to light what Louise had referred to me about a week ago, was Songezo Zibi's book, Manifesto, and how much of what is being spoken about here is relevant to the next African Leadership Week talk next week. And I'd love for us as a community to connect those dots between what Outer is doing and what people like Zibi are trying to do in terms of civil action and active citizenry. Yeah, that's all I want to say. I hope we can connect the dots and make sure people in this group are in that call as well.
Yeah.
John Luke, I am bursting with excitement, because that's exactly what we are trying to do. And that was exactly why we are hosting these conversations. And when other people say the same things, it has so much more power. So thank you for that. We want to give Ferriel her chance to speak about the amazing work that she and the team are doing with regard to water, and Ferriel's role is the manager of water and environmental affairs. So Wayne, with your permission, we'll hand over to Ferriel.
Yeah, over to you, Ferriel. Dr. Adams, she used to be our chairperson, by the way, and finished her PhD recently, and we've convinced her to drop that chairmanship non-executive role and join us full time, because it's really exciting stuff. So over to you, Ferriel.
Thank you. I'm just going to quickly just share some slides, if that's okay with everyone. I did chuckle a bit, Louise, because you said water and environmental affairs, which makes me sound like a minister or something. You know, so yeah, I think WaterCan is very new to Outer, and if you'll allow me a few minutes just to share what our thinking is and why we've come to this realization that it's an important part for us to work on. A couple of months ago, the Deputy Minister of Water and Sanitation said that South Africa is not facing a water crisis at present. And I almost fell off my chair because I thought, wait, am I living in the same place? Because, you know, there's been 10 years of problems, if not longer, in terms of our water resources. And just since January, we've been faced with a lack of chlorine in the country, which, by the way, kind of slipped into the media and was missed. So many of our treatment plants didn't have chlorine. We've had more than just Nelson Mandela Bay facing day zero. And I don't think this is going to be the last of our day zero experiences. We also have more and more people having less access to water. The high levels of E. coli, you close down a whole beach because of your municipality, you know, spewing out E. coli into the water. And then the rising acid mine drainage that we've been talking about for 15 years and is still bubbling up, and not enough has been done. So quite honestly, you know, we're dealing with load shedding today. We're going to be hitting stage 6. But the reality is that South Africa could have a water crisis far worse than the energy one. And this is part of the motivation why Outer has developed WaterCan. So just in, you know, very simply, the state of our water resources. South Africa is a water scarce country. We know that geographically. We have less rainfall than the rest of the world. Our average is 50% less than the average in the world. Our key river systems, the Vaal, Olifants, Crocodile, are severely polluted. Our river ecosystems are not in a healthy state. So you have, of our 223 ecosystems, 60% of them are threatened. So that is indeed just shocking in itself, and all of us should actually sit up and take notice. The other thing is, I'm sure some of you have followed that you know, that the blue drop and green drop reports were released after 9 years, and we know, you know, because of bad ministers, because things were so bad they didn't want to report on it. So the green drop tells you the state of wastewater in the country, and the blue drop tells you the quality of drinking water in the country. And both of that was just appalling. I mean, the blue drop showed that less than 52% of our water supply systems, more than 52, are in a critical state. In terms of waste water, more than 39% are critical, and they're just not functioning. And then if you break that down according to provinces, it gets even worse. The slide I'm sharing with you right now is a combination of our issues in South Africa. On the left, that's acid mine drainage when it comes to the Vaal. It creates that kind of salt kind of environment, and that is in the West Rand in Gauteng. On the right, more and more people are going to have no water and have to travel kilometers to get it. The one on the left is a manhole that's open, and sewage was spewing out of this hole for like a year. For a year, people were living with sewage. And then, of course, on the right-hand side, if anyone recognizes, that's Hartbeespoort Dam. And so our water resources are completely messed up. And that's what has Outer on high alert, because a lot of the problems, which is the next issue, is we can place, look, we know that there's climate change. I'm a climate activist, and climate change is going to make things worse. But one of the key things that we're facing at the moment is the high levels of corruption and complete destruction at a local level, a local government level. And that's the area that we want to focus our work. And so with all of that, that is how WaterCan was thought about and developed. And we you know, WaterCan, we're playing on the whole term of a jug, but it's the Citizens Action Network or the Community Action Network. And we're looking at how do we get, and everybody's been talking about that, the questions have been alluding to that, how do we get people to become the eyes and ears on the ground to monitor this resource? Because we don't have time to play around. Experts say that, and scientists show that we are not going to meet our drinking water demand by 2025. And if I say add to that is that more than 20 million people in South Africa don't have direct access to clean drinking water. We're sitting on a time bomb that's going to just explode and make things worse. And that is why we want to do this. So we want to build this network of citizen science activists. They're there, they exist. There are people who are cleaning rivers. There are people who are monitoring their resource, their dams, they're cleaning up the beaches. Let's create a network, and we want to work on developing a platform where people can then input their data so that we can have a map and be able to identify the hotspots and show government like this is an area that needs some concern, and that is what we want to do using science, using activism. We want to empower citizens to understand their water rights, number one, to challenge in areas where it's not working, and then to hold those accountable, especially those in local government accountable, as well as there are industries that are polluting and getting away with it because enforcement is so weak. So we have to protect the little water that we do have, and that was the whole kind of what Outer Water Can is going to be doing. And some of the key things, our approaches, is basically to look at advocacy. That is important. It's kind of speaking to other people about our water situation. It's not publicly known. It's not known enough. There's not enough outrage on our water situation. It's about policy analysis. So some of our policies are actually quite good. It's the enforcement that's the problem. How do we create that education and awareness around that? We want to establish a citizen science water quality heat map. There are bits and pieces of it, but we want to bring it together. And, imagine coming up with the state of our water resources using the information from citizens on the ground. And that's what we want to do. A key thing that we're doing is we want to establish water testing. So what we've done is we have developed with partnership with a laboratory in Free State, a basic water testing kit that people can, and I will show you a slide about that, but we want to have people testing all over the country and inputting the data. So to kind of launch this, we want to have a World Water Monitoring Day on the 18th of September to add to this. But how will this work? It's not just everyone free, loose doing. We have three kind of levels of citizen involvement, which kind of meets different people's passions and commitments. So you're going to have the individual passionate person who wants to check the quality of their water, doesn't want to really get involved in organizations, and you'll have that kind of a level of people that we will engage with, and we have them. You then have another group, and this is one of the key areas where there's individuals and small organizations. So there's a group, for example, the Hanops Revival, started by one woman and her daughter trying to clean a river. It's massive now. They employ people to work. They've got sponsorships from the businesses around them, because the water resource is not only important to the people who live there, but it's also necessary for the economy and for basic business. So she has funding from that. They would need the testing kits, they would need protective gear, and she's been able to do that as an example. So that's the kind of focus area for a lot of what we want to do, is that level 2. But there's also another level, which is how do we get schools to test water? Because we know that local governments have to test. So Rand Water, all the water boards have to test our water on a regular basis. And some of their water testing points are actually in schools. So imagine if we can have these kits in schools run by students and teachers, maybe grade 10 students, so they're in the schools for a long time. They're going to be learning science. They're going to be learning activism. They're going to be learning empowerment and service to their community. And that is the level 3 that we're trying to build in the longer term. Look, we've just started. We're starting with 2, but we're definitely moving on to 3 as well. Just in terms of the water testing kit, we will have we're testing for the, so to test water and quality of water, there's a whole list that you have. There's like a list of chemicals that you test to test if your water quality is okay. Our water testing kit, and this is an older version, so it doesn't have our logo on it, but it takes certain key parameters. So we test for nitrates, nitrites, we test for phosphates, we test for so the chemical test, we test for pH, alkalinity, and hardness. All of that gives you the chemical analysis of our water. And then we also test, because in some areas there's high levels of metals in our water and acid mine drainage, for example, there's one test that looks at a combined metal test, which looks at copper, lead, zinc, mercury, cadmium, and 1 or 2 others. Then we do the bacterial test, which is those vials at the bottom there. They test for dead plant matter, dead animal matter, and E. coli. And then we have this pink circle on the bottom there. It's like a little plate, tests for E. coli itself. So just E. coli. And we've done this. We've worked in the vial. We've used to test it in the vial. And we've tested in KZN. And at both times, we tested in Durban. And we got high levels of E. coli. And a week later, the Durban municipality closed the beaches. Not because we made our test public, but what we know is that these tests work. And so that's something. We're also going to be working with Adopt a River in KZN. What they do is they have money to send tests to a laboratory. So this is an indicator test. They do these tests monthly, and we've asked them to then do our tests as well as their tests, and then to compare it to the laboratory test. So it gives us a little bit of information. It gives us credibility if we want to write a science paper, or if we go up against government and they'll say citizen science is not important, we'll say, well, here are the laboratory tests that give us the credibility we need. So it verifies our kits. That in a nutshell is WaterCan. But I think that what's been so motivating for all of us is that there's definitely a change. Firstly, the change in the new minister, the placement of a director general that is permanent in the Department of Water and Sanitation has been extremely helpful for me, because they're not only more accessible, what they're doing is sensible. And it's for me, I've been an environmental activist for a long time, and this is the first minister that I have faith in, that he can actually deal with some of the issues. The problem is we are at such a bad space right now that he has a lot to do. But also there's a lot of energy and motivation and passion at a community level. And that approach has also, people are coming together. It's the one area where everybody needs clean water. So what we're seeing on the ground is that it's cutting across race, it's cutting across class, it's cutting across age barriers, and bringing a whole range of people together to fight for water. And we've seen this in Harrismith, we've seen this in Makanda, where people are having to work together to actually fix the water situation. And the one thing that people have been calling, and that's why so much emphasis is placed on these water testing kits, is that please help us figure out what's in our water. Just to add, we ran an online survey a couple of weeks ago. And just to say, do you trust the water, the quality of the water that you're drinking? And less than 37% said yes, and this is countrywide. And that is a problem, because not all our water is bad. It's just that people don't know that the quality of their water. And we're saying that part of local municipalities' role should be to making that knowledge, that information, public knowledge, and they should share it rather than being closed off. And that's part of the advocacy that we will be pushing for. So that's WaterCan in a quick nutshell. We will be sending out invites for people to join us to test water over the next coming months, as well as to join us. You don't have to test water on 18th September if you don't have a kit or you don't, but we want people to support it, to share the knowledge, to share the information. We want this to be the biggest water testing thing happening in South Africa this year. So that's where we're at. Thank you.
So, Ferial, just keep an eye on all of these smiles. Again, you are singing to the choir, but this choir has connections and we know people, and we're going to definitely get this message out. And thank you. You've inspired me in what you were saying. So let's hear whether anybody wanted to say something, engage with Ferial, have a comment. We have a little bit of time left, so we want to create, well, actually, let's open this up. If anybody either want to speak to Ferial or to Wayne or to Stephanie, just don't, we're not a quiet bunch of people, we're a bunch of people who are engaged. So John Luke as a starting point to get us going. John Luke.
Yeah, just quickly, we're working with the SACHI, the South African Research Chair for Waste and Climate Change, and are involved with the Ngani River networks with Professor Christina Twas, and this appeals to this project incredibly, and I'd love to get my hands on this testing kit.
Nice.
And I think the other thing, what I heard in a previous conversation with Wayne and Ferial is that these testing kits cost money. And so part of what we need to figure out is how can we fund some of the testing kits. So we need the testing kits and we need the warm human beings who's going to go and do the testing. But imagine if people could kind of make a commitment to, through their CSI budgets or whatever. So I'm really going to encourage, Ferial, did you want to say something about that?
Yeah, you're spot on. I mean, Louise, that's exactly it, is that right now I'm one person. And we're a big organization, and I actually encroach on everyone's team. Everyone, as you heard, Stefani, the team is packed with work. And we just go and we have to use everybody. And so we need people, we need funding as well, because it's not just we don't want this to just be in the more middle class areas where you have an established organization or a river group. We want it to be in other areas as well, where people won't be able to, a testing kit like that, which takes 6 tests, so you can use it for 6 months. If you do one test a month, is 1,500 rand. It's not a lot, but we need assistance to get that out to people. And the training, we need, to train people as well in terms of, okay, so if you've got this data, what does it mean? How do you then challenge your local government on the data that you're receiving? So that's the kind of things we need as well.
So Ferial, I'm going to challenge, sorry, Wayne?
No, well, just to add to that, we are Section 18A certified, so people do get tax rebates if they donate to these causes in outer. But just on the water testing, we then follow up with proper lab testing when necessary. This heat map that Ferial talks about, people will be able to drill down and find out what the quality of their drinking water and river systems water is like. So it's going to be quite interactive. But it is essentially citizens owning the information that government should own. And we're only doing this because we don't trust government, they don't keep it updated. So when citizens start playing in this space and doing the work of government, but in a way that involves citizen science, and it is the cost is spread amongst hundreds of communities, it's easy to do. But it needs the structure that Ferial is putting in place, and it's really going to be exciting. And we're also going to be developing an app so that people don't have to worry about inaccuracies. They just really photograph those strips, and it all uploads information into the database and into the heat map. And that's going to take funding. So we're going to be hitting the roads, asking and looking for funding for this exciting project. But while we're doing that, we're journeying along. We're starting to build it.
And I'm going to just challenge Ferial. Ferial, could you please start a WhatsApp group? And WhatsApp groups really do work for water ambassadors. And I want to put my hand up. I want to be one of the first water ambassadors. And then that we are the people who you can call on to amplify your message, to put out the call for action, to kind of mobilize our communities. And so the more we can kind of use what's already there. So, and I want a sticker on my car to say I'm a water ambassador. I'm waiting for you to help me get that sticker. And I know, I mean, I've said to you, we can get these grade 10s, and if grade 10s know that they are stepping up to lead. I was in the UK last week, and they have the, you know, whatever, the President's Project or the whatever. What a privilege for a young person to know that they are securing the future for our country through leading in their community, and we're going to equip them with leadership skills, and we're going to, so that I get extremely excited about that. We have Guy has put his hand up, but so Farrell, by this evening, I want to be on your WhatsApp group as a water ambassador, and then we'll invite other people to join us, and we'll create this movement of people who care about water for South Africa. And so can I also suggest that we use the hashtag water for SA or whatever, so that we can start to have the conversation. Join us on Twitter. We're a very active community on Twitter. We want to support you. We want you to get this message out, and we want to play our part. Guy, you guys don't know Guy Harris yet. You're in for a treat. Lots of names being mentioned here around other people who want to be water ambassadors. We can be influencers of this bunch. Guy.
Yeah, I'm sorry, my voice is terrible because I've been in bed the last 3 days. So hopefully it's just a cold and a sore throat and not COVID. But anyway, I'm surviving, and today was my first day back on webinars. I'm very tempted to talk about Great Black River, which is where my my spousal family home is, because they've got huge water problems there. But but I will connect with Farrell because my wife does environmental education at Kirstenbosch, and I know they do some form of water testing with the kids at the moment. And that's a cross section of kids, not just the leafy suburbs kids, but a lot of them from poorer neighborhoods. I've through my limited activism, I've become aware that there's quite a lot that one can do through the parliamentary committees, and I think I've seen outer people at parliamentary committees, especially around the budget. And I've known Wayne for a long time. If you look at our pedigrees, but I was an amateur when I went and started working the parliamentary committee system around my passions of early childhood development, small and medium enterprise, and things like that. But I've made some very good connections there. The one guy in Treasury who was particularly involved in early childhood development. So I would like to know, how do we really harness that opportunity of the parliamentary committees, and what are the success cases of activists using the parliamentary committees to get real results, real action, real policy change, real real turnabouts. I mean, they scrapped the environmental impact assessments, and they said no, it's socio-economic impact assessments. But I've yet to see one that's done in advance of the legislation or regulation change. It's usually done afterwards to try and justify what's been done. So I'm sure there are a lot of very well-informed people at Outer who could give us some guidance on that. Thanks.
Wayne, do you want to go, or Stephanie? Or?
I'm sure Stefanie, maybe you've got some insights there. Stefanie, she might be doing an interview. Are you there?
Yes, I'm gonna. You can take the spotlight. I unfortunately have to go. It was such a pleasure being here, but I need to join another meeting. So Wayne, this is unfortunately on you. I'm sure you can answer it. But
Well,
thank you so much. It was an absolute pleasure. I enjoyed this. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Stefanie. I think, Guy, we'll engage and just get down to the nitty-gritty of what it is. Ferial will also probably have an understanding, but there's a lot that we have to dissect and cut through the clutter of what is happening in this space. I mean, government is constantly moving the goalposts and trying to distance themselves from their responsibility in this space. But we use the law, we use all the acts and the rights that we have. And in water, it's very strong law, by the way. It's a criminal act to pump sewage into rivers. We can hold these municipal managers to account. And the one thing that's missing, which is why we started WaterCan, is to make sure that we get the proper data. Because with information and with warnings and with engagements with municipalities, you start to build a case. And once you can prove to a court that you've done everything you can, and there's still no desire by polluters, that we hold them to account. But I think I'll engage with you, Guy, and we'll try and unpack that a little bit more when we have some time.
Can I jump in?
Sorry, Perel.
You want to say something, Louise, first?
No, I think this is part of what we're trying to do. We're trying to connect the dots. So Guy has had some really meaningful experience of using those parliamentary oversight committees. Yeah. And I have a suspicion that Guy might be bringing something to this conversation that Arta might not have used before. I don't know, but I mean, this is the whole point, is what if we were really tapping into what all of these amazing people could contribute? Ferrell, sorry, Al.
So that's exactly it, right? Because the challenges with the portfolio committees and my experience with them is that it depends who the chair of that portfolio committee is. And if it is, and on energy, for example, if you looked at it, say 10 years ago, there was quite a good chairperson of the portfolio committee. And so he would give civil society equal say, etc. And then he would also, give us feedback. And that was something that was really good. But if you're going to have people who are not basically looking at the country as a whole as an important thing, but only their party, it becomes a little bit more difficult. And one of the things we used to do and how we used to deal with the portfolio committees is we would have a friend on whichever party it was and submit pertinent questions, because if something is asked at parliament level, we have to have an answer and they have to be honest. So in terms of like costing and, how did they go about for a tender, those kind of things would be very useful for us, especially on the energy side. So I think that we'd love to know more from Guy on how to really tackle the portfolio committees, because right now we've just been using like the question time, but we need a connection inside, and specifically for us from my side on water and environment, on those different portfolio committees, whatever party it is, to ask the right questions.
So we have used them in the past, more in the transport portfolio committee and Scopa. But yes, the more we can engage with those portfolio committees and apply the pressure there, the better. So let's unpack that a little bit more. Thanks, Guy.
So we've come to the end of our time together. The purpose of our conversation this afternoon was for you to all be enchanted with the outer team. I certainly am, but I want to, and John-Luc is, and I think Mel's been sending some messages to say she is. So, Guy, did you want to say something?
Yeah, just very quickly. I did have a familial connection in Parliament, which I did not use. I occasionally would send questions to MPs to ask, but when I went into committee meetings, I made a very clear that I spend more time chatting to people from the party that my son was not involved with, rather than to my son's party's people.
Yeah.
So opportunities for us to use our connections and our relationships. I'm a movement builder and a citizen activist, and I know that none of this work happens without relationships. So now that you're all in love with Outer, I do want one of two of you to say, actually use your voice, not just your chat, to say something to Wayne and Stephanie and Ferrell around how inspired you've been by being on this call this afternoon. So do not hold back. We know we need 5-to-1 appreciation to criticism in order to think well. This is your time and your chance to practice your ability to appreciate. Can you just unmute yourself and speak? Mel.
Yeah, I just want to thank you, Louise, for all these opportunities that you're offering to us this week. And I'm totally blown away by the variety of, challenges Outer takes on behalf of the citizens of South Africa. And I feel like I've been a little bit in the dark about that. And I feel really grateful. Actually, that's just what I feel. I just feel really, really grateful, because I'm like, what if you didn't have my back? Just, that just makes me feel really grateful. So thank you very, very much for the work that you've done.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mel. I see Moira has also unmuted herself. Moira is joining us all the way from France, and she's inspired by what's happening in South Africa.
I've got some dreadful noise going on, sorry. But I just find it absolutely extraordinary, the attitude that everybody is emitting, because there's just there's no blame or rebuke. It's just, let's get on with it and get it right. And I find that extraordinary. And I get a lump in my throat when I hear you all talking about this.
Lovely.
Moira wants to come back to South Africa, and she's being enchanted by all of us. That's fantastic. Thank you. Anybody else? Reynold.
Louise, I'm just so glad I could make the call and that, my connection held. And I have hope. This call has just given me so much hope. Thank you, Wayne. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Ferrell. Yeah, I'll stop there.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Reynold. Last person to say something, or have we all said what we wanted to say?
Can I just say to everybody, thanks for listening. And if we have a monthly newsletter that goes out to our supporters, and if you're not a supporter and you want to be part of this movement, on outer.co.za, it's quite quick and easy. It's 5 minutes. You decide how much you want to contribute. There's no set fee, and we'll keep in touch with you. You'll get our newsletters and go into our website and just see what we're doing there at outer.co.za. It's really.
When it's been on my to-do list forever. I'm grabbing my card. I'm going to do it now. So
okay,
that's
good.
me.
I'm going to be phoning our support relations team and asking them to look out for Louise van Rijn coming on board.
It's coming now. I'm going to do it now. Thank you so much, everybody. I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to walk my own talk. And love you all. Thank you for being on this call. And if citizens step up and take hands, we can change this country and create something spectacular. So have a good afternoon. Thank you, Wayne. Thank you, Ferrell. Thank you. Stephanie's already gone. Jolene will get this recording out as quickly as possible. And please share the recording with other people.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Old West.
Bye.
Bye.